This happened last weekend, and I still feel like a dumb, flaming disaster of a human being. So, I, 28M, work at a mid-sized marketing firm. I recently got promoted and have been trying extra hard to stay in the good graces of my boss, Diane, early 50s, yoga, Birkenstocks, probably drinks her own homemade kombucha. She's usually very chill, but she's also deeply attached to her aging Pomeranian, Captain Pickles, who I swear has a better health plan than I do. Now, Diane was heading to a week-long yoga retreat in Sedona and didn't trust traditional dog-sitting services. She knows I grew up with dogs, so she asked if I'd mind watching Captain Pickles for the weekend before her sister could take over. I said yes. Of course. Because I'm a moron who desperately needs external validation and has a hard time saying no. She drops off Captain Pickles Friday morning along with a printed packet titled The Pickles Manifesto, complete with feeding schedules, grooming instructions, emotional needs, I wish I was kidding, and a laminated chart titled Signs of Existential Dread. My man Pickles is apparently prone to crises of meaning. So Friday night goes fine. Pickles and I vibe. We watch some Planet Earth. He barks at a glacier. I feed him half a boiled sweet potato like the manifesto demands. All good. Saturday rolls around, and I decide to take him on a little hike at a nearby nature reserve. Now, this place has a small lake. Scenic. Serene. Ducks. People kayaking. Great spot. We sit by the water. I toss some pebbles. Pickles yaps at a lily pad. Then out of nowhere, the little guy starts wheezing. Like, seriously wheezing. I check his harness, his throat, his breath. Nothing stuck, just this horrible slow-motion asthma attack. But for dogs. I panic. I call the emergency vet listed in the Pickles Manifesto, but before I even finish describing the symptoms, the wheezing stops. Because Captain Pickles has gone full ragdoll. Right there. In my lap. Under a maple tree. A duck quacked at the exact moment he passed, which felt unnecessarily cruel. Now, most rational people would take the dog to the emergency vet anyway. Or call the owner. Or, at least preserve the body in a respectful way. But I panicked. Like deep, stupid, adrenaline-fueled panic. I had just killed my boss's dog. Or, at least that's how my brain framed it. I was already mentally rehearsing how I'd tell her. Sorry, Diane. Pickles achieved enlightenment and left his mortal shell. Nope. Instead, my idiot brain decided that I needed to give Pickles the most honorable send-off possible. And somewhere deep inside my unwell mind, I decided that meant a Viking funeral. So, I went to a hardware store. I bought a small wooden raft, actually a crate meant for displaying artisan jams, lighter fluid, and one of those long barbecue lighters. I lovingly wrapped Captain Pickles in a soft flannel shirt. I placed him on the raft with a couple of milk bones and one of my dog-eared philosophy books for his journey to Valhalla. I pushed the raft out into the lake. It floated beautifully for like 20 seconds. Then I lit it. The fire caught faster than I expected, which was both majestic and horrifying. People around the lake started noticing. A child yelled, "Mommy, the dog's on fire." And at least 3 kayaks started paddling toward the flaming crate. Turns out, open flames on public water are extremely illegal. Who knew? A ranger showed up before the crate had even fully sunk and demanded to know what I was doing. In my panic, I said, "It's a cultural ritual," which somehow made everything worse. They called the cops. The cops. By the time the situation de-escalated, and I narrowly avoided a fine for unauthorized open burning, I was emotionally cooked. I went home and cried into Pickles' now empty travel bag. I figured I'd tell Diane the truth on Sunday. I'd apologize. I'd cry. I'd beg forgiveness. Except Sunday morning, I get a call. From Diane. Saying her sister arrived early to pick up Pickles and that she wanted to swing by to grab his stuff. My soul left my body. I mumbled some excuse about a mix-up and that I'd dropped him off already, which she accepted without suspicion. I figured that bought me some time to craft a better explanation. That afternoon, I get another call. From Diane's sister. She is confused, because Captain Pickles is very much alive. Apparently, the dog I brought hiking wasn't Pickles. I had, in a moment of sheer idiocy, grabbed the wrong dog from my apartment building's courtyard. It was the same breed, almost the same size, and wearing a similar harness. But it was not Pickles. I burned someone else's Pomeranian. I don't even know how to begin unraveling the chaos that followed. I ended up calling the number on the collar I still had in my backpack. I'm an idiot, not a monster. Turns out the dog's name was Muffin, and the owner was an elderly man named Harold who thought Muffin had simply run off. I met with Harold in person, broke down crying, and confessed everything. To my shock, he didn't sue me. He just sat there, patted my shoulder, and said, "She always did love drama." I did, however, pay for the cremation of what little remained, bought Harold a new dog bed, and have been secretly sending him Petco gift cards like I'm trying to buy forgiveness. As for Diane, she still doesn't know. Captain Pickles is fine. But every time I see him now, with his weird judgmental eyes and his aristocratic little fluffball face, I remember the floating pyre. I remember the smell of burning milk bones. I remember the child yelling, "Mommy, the dog's on fire." And I know that somewhere, somehow, Muffin is looking down on me from Dog Valhalla, chewing on a celestial tennis ball, and thinking, "What the hell, man?" If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. So this happened a few years ago when I was trying way too hard to be liked by my girlfriend's family. For context, her dad was this stoic, ex-military, self-proclaimed man's man type, and I was a 22-year-old college student who knew more about microbreweries than anything remotely useful or masculine in his eyes. I'd been dating his daughter, Mia, for about 8 months and was finally invited to their family home for a weekend. It was my shot to make a good impression, so naturally, I planned an elaborate dinner. Mia told me her dad loved no-frills meat dishes. Great. I can do meat. I'd worked part-time in a hipster bistro during college. I figured if I made him something simple and hearty, I'd win him over. So I offered to cook dinner Saturday night, and he actually said, "Let's see if the kid can do more than toast and cereal." Challenge accepted. Here's where the screw-up begins. The morning of the dinner, Mia's mom mentioned there was a bunch of meat in the deep freezer in their garage. "Take whatever you want," she said. I found a few large, vacuum-sealed bags, some clearly labeled pork shoulder, venison steaks, and one unmarked one. The unmarked one had this dark, rich color, almost like a beef roast, but it was leaner and smelled a little gamey when thawed. I assumed it was some kind of wild game, maybe elk or boar. Her dad was an avid hunter, so it made sense. I thought perfect, rustic, masculine. Meat. I made this whole spread, seared and roasted the mystery meat, with garlic, rosemary, and red wine. Made potatoes dauphinoise, fancy scalloped potatoes, but I didn't call them that because I wanted to live. Green beans with bacon. I even made a chocolate souffle. I plated it all with actual pride and served it like some sort of culinary badass. Her dad took one bite, looked me in the eye, and said, "Damn, that's some good dog." I laughed. Like, awkward haha, thinking it was a joke. But his expression didn't change. He looked at Mia's mom, who had frozen mid-chew, eyes wide. Then he put his fork down and asked me where I got the meat. I told him, the unmarked bag from the garage freezer. Silence. He stands up, walks out without a word. Mia follows. I just sit there, sweating into my souffle. 10 minutes later, Mia comes back pale and quietly says, "You just cooked Bear." Bear was their dog. Was. Turns out Bear had passed away a few months earlier. Old age, natural causes, and her dad, being the sentimental, messed up guy he is, couldn't bring himself to bury the dog right away. So he had Bear cremated. Except when the pet crematorium got delayed due to COVID backlogs, he decided to preserve Bear until they could reschedule. Preserve equals vacuum seal and deep freeze his corpse. I had just slow roasted their beloved family dog with garlic and red wine and fed it to the entire family. including the man who raised him from a puppy. I wanted to disintegrate into the floor. Mia's dad didn't talk to me for the rest of the trip. Mia didn't break up with me, but she couldn't look at me for 2 days. Her mom tried to console me by saying, "Well, at least we know he was marbled nicely," which somehow made it worse. But the kicker? The worst part? They didn't hate the meal. They actually liked it. No one spit it out. Her dad even finished his plate before realizing what it was. There were leftovers. Her mom had seconds. I had seconds. We all unknowingly devoured a dog together like some suburban Donner party. Needless to say, I wasn't invited back for a long time. Every Christmas, Mia's family sends a holiday card with Bear's face on it. The first one had "in loving memory" on it. The rest have just been his goofy picture with captions like "thinking of you always" and "gone but never forgotten," smiley face, and last year's said "best meal ever." Woof. So yeah, that's the time I tried to impress my girlfriend's dad by slow roasting his dead dog. Moral of the story: label your frozen meat. TIFU by accidentally revealing my biggest secret to my family during Thanksgiving dinner. Thanksgiving has always been a big deal in my family. It's one of those holidays where we gather around a massive table filled with food, play awkward board games, and talk about everything under the sun. There are always a few moments where we all stop and ask ourselves, why did we invite Uncle Bill again? And who thought it was a good idea to let Cousin Jenny bring her weird homemade cranberry salad? This year was no different. My wife, Emily, and I had been preparing for the big day for weeks. We were hosting for the first time, which was both exciting and stressful. To add to that, I had a secret. A big one. A few months ago, I had started a side hustle. It wasn't the kind of thing I'd ever mention in front of my family because they would definitely judge me. I had discovered an underground world of, well, let's just say it was a hobby that wasn't exactly mainstream. In short, I had been playing a role in an online fetish community. I won't go into the details of the nature of the community, but just know that it wasn't something you bring up at a family gathering. So, as Thanksgiving Day approached, I made sure to delete any traces of my secret life. I wiped my browser history, closed the apps, and even went as far as uninstalling a couple of programs from my computer, just to be safe. Emily was in the kitchen cooking, and I was in the living room making sure the TV and music were set for the gathering. The kids were playing in the backyard, and everything seemed normal. The doorbell rang, and my parents and siblings arrived in a flurry of noise and holiday cheer. Hugs were exchanged, compliments about the food started flying, and soon, everyone settled around the table. Emily, who is the social butterfly of our relationship, did most of the talking, making sure everyone had a drink and was comfortable. I kept to myself, a little more quiet than usual, because my mind kept wandering back to my secret. I tried to focus on the conversation, but my thoughts kept drifting. My brother, David, was talking about his new job and how things were going with his girlfriend, and then my sister, Laura, started asking me about my work. I replied that everything was fine, but she pressed on. Come on, tell us something interesting. You've been a bit of a mystery lately. It was a harmless question, and I should have just brushed it off, but my mind is racing. My gut told me to keep my mouth shut, but for some reason I couldn't. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was the nerves, or maybe it was just a weird mix of all of it. I looked around at my family, so familiar, so comfortable. They had no idea what had been happening in my life over the past few months. They had no idea that I'd been getting up in the middle of the night, sneaking away to my office, wearing strange costumes, and taking part in weird online events. They had no clue how out of control my little side hobby had gotten. Actually, there's something I've been meaning to tell you guys, I said before I could stop myself. The room went quiet. Emily, sitting next to me, looked at me with wide eyes, her eyebrows raised in concern. My mother, always the curious one, leaned forward. "What is it, honey?" she asked, her voice full of intrigue. I should have stopped right then. I should have realized that no matter how much I trusted them, this wasn't the moment. But instead, I continued. "I've been involved in something recently." I started, my voice faltering. "It's kind of an online community. It's a bit niche, but I thought I'd share." Everyone was silent now, waiting for me to continue. My brother, who was always the first to make fun of me, smirked slightly, clearly expecting me to reveal something ridiculous, like that I had joined a knitting club or started playing competitive video games. But no, this was far from ordinary. It's a fetish community. I blurted out before I could stop myself. The words were out, hanging in the air like a bomb. Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. My mother blinked several times, her mouth opening and closing like a fish trying to understand the words I had just uttered. My sister's eyes widened in shock. My dad, who had been sipping his wine, spit it out across the table, coughing violently. Emily looked at me, her face a mix of disbelief and concern. "Wait, what?" she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I had no idea how to recover from this. I could feel the blood draining from my face, and suddenly, the entire room felt like it was closing in on me. My mind was racing. I tried to think of anything, to say to make this less awkward, but my brain was stuck. I had just revealed a side of me that no one knew existed, and I had no idea how to backpedal. My dad was still coughing, and my mom was holding a hand to her chest, her face pale. A fetish community? What kind of fetish are we talking about here? She finally asked, her voice trembling. Is this some kind of group for costumes or something? I was mortified. No, not exactly, I stammered. I don't know how to explain it. It's just something I've been exploring, and I guess I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't think it was something you guys would understand. There was a long, awkward pause as everyone digested what I had just said. The air in the room felt thick with confusion and judgment. My brother finally spoke up, breaking the silence. Okay, hold up, David said, his tone more curious than critical. So, you're saying you've been participating in some weird internet thing that involves costumes or whatever. And this is what you've been doing in the middle of the night? I nodded, my face red with embarrassment. Yeah, pretty much. For a moment, no one said anything. Then, Emily finally broke the tension. She gave me a sympathetic look and gently reached over, placing her hand on mine. It's okay, babe, she said, trying to reassure me. I mean, it's weird, but if it's something that makes you happy, we can talk about it later, all right? My parents were still processing what I had said, and the awkward silence persisted, but Emily's words helped calm me down a little. That night, after the dinner was over, I found myself sitting in the living room with Emily, my mind spinning. I knew I had made a mistake by mentioning it at all. I wasn't sure if my family would ever let me forget this conversation, or if they'd understand that it was just a weird phase I was going through. The moral of the story? Never, ever reveal your weirdest secrets during Thanksgiving dinner. Trust me, it's not worth the confusion or the awkward dinner table conversation that follows. It was just another Tuesday morning when I decided to go out for a quick jog before work. I had recently started trying to improve my fitness, and I figured a 30-minute run would be a good way to start my day. I wasn't exactly in great shape, but I had been running a couple of times a week, so I was starting to feel a bit more confident. Plus, the weather was perfect, cool but not cold, with a light breeze. I had mapped out a nice route around my neighborhood, one that wasn't too long but still offered a bit of a challenge. It was the usual course, around the block, past the park, and then back down the main street to home. Nothing too crazy. I even decided to leave my phone at home this time, figuring I would just focus on my run without any distractions. Big mistake. As I began my jog, I felt pretty good. My legs were moving smoothly, and I was hitting a good pace. The air was crisp, and I could hear the soft rhythm of my feet hitting the pavement. I was zoning out, thinking about work, when I suddenly noticed something out of the corner of my eye. There, on the sidewalk ahead of me, was a very large, very intimidating-looking dog. It was a pit bull, and it was just standing there staring at me. Now, I'm not one to freak out easily, but I've heard plenty of stories about dogs getting aggressive, so my mind immediately went into overdrive. I tried to calculate my options as I kept running. The dog didn't seem to be on a leash, and it was blocking the path. I could veer off onto the grass, but the ground was uneven, and I wasn't sure I could maintain my pace without risking an ankle sprain. I could turn around and go the other way, but that would mean retracing my steps, and who knew if the dog would follow me? Or worse, decide to chase me down. I was still a good distance away, so I slowed down just a little, trying to assess the situation. The dog didn't move. It just stood there, staring at me, its eyes locked on mine. I started to think that maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe it was just a friendly dog, sitting there like a statue, enjoying the morning sun. I told myself to calm down. Dogs usually just wanted attention, right? Big mistake number 2. As I got closer, the dog's stance changed. It lowered its head, its ears flattened, and then, to my horror, it let out a low growl. Now, I'd been in enough situations with dogs to recognize that sound. It wasn't a playful growl. This was the "I'm going to bite you if you come any closer" growl. My heart skipped a beat. This was it. I was going to get attacked by a dog while I was out for a jog. I had no plan. No strategy. I wasn't even sure if I could outrun a pit bull. I froze for a second, not sure what to do. My brain was racing through 1,000 possible scenarios. Should I try to run past the dog quickly? Would that provoke it? Should I turn around and sprint the other way? But what if the dog was faster than me? Before I could make a decision, the dog suddenly lunged. It wasn't the full-on charge I had feared, but it was enough to make me panic. I took off running, my heart pounding, my legs moving faster than I had ever run before. I could hear the sound of paws on pavement behind me, getting closer and closer. The growl grew louder. The dog was chasing me. I could feel the adrenaline kicking in, but I was starting to doubt my ability to outrun a dog that was clearly faster than I was. My mind was racing. What do you do when a dog is chasing you? I remembered something my mom had always said: if a dog chases you, don't run. Stand still and make yourself big. Yeah, that might work with a small dog, but not with a pit bull. I wasn't about to risk stopping to try to make myself big. I just needed to keep running. I turned the corner onto the next street, hoping to lose the dog in the maze of houses. I could hear the dog getting closer, its panting and growls echoing behind me. I needed a plan. Fast. I spotted a small alleyway between 2 houses. I didn't know if it would work, but I darted for it, squeezing between the buildings as quickly as I could. I could hear the dog trying to follow, but it was slower in the confined space. I reached the end of the alley, and to my relief, the dog seemed to stop. I dared to take a breath. I was safe. Or so I thought. As I caught my breath, I realized something. I had no idea where I was. I had never been in this part of the neighborhood before. The alley had led me to a street I didn't recognize, and I had no clue which way to go to get back home. I was lost. At this point, the adrenaline was still pumping through my body, but it was mixed with panic. I tried to calm myself down. I had been running for only about 10 minutes, but now, in a complete panic, I felt like I was miles away from home. I started walking down the street, trying to figure out where I was and how I could get back. It wasn't long before I saw a familiar landmark, an old coffee shop I used to go to. It was a bit out of my way, but it was enough to reassure me that I wasn't completely lost. I turned down the road and started heading back toward my neighborhood, hoping to avoid the dog and any further encounters. After what felt like an eternity, I finally made it home. My heart was still racing and my legs felt like jelly. I went straight inside, locked the door, and collapsed on the couch, breathing heavily. I never thought a simple jog could turn into such an ordeal. I ended up deciding to take a break from running for a while, at least until I could gather the courage to face that street again. I'm not afraid of dogs, at least I didn't think I was, but I learned a valuable lesson that day. Always carry your phone, and never assume you can outrun a pit bull. The worst part? I ended up being late for work. And when I told my coworkers about the dog, they laughed and said I was overreacting. But hey, they weren't the ones being chased by a pit bull. Lesson learned. TIFU by accidentally becoming the face of a Canadian maple syrup brand and getting deported. Okay, so. For context, I'm a 27-year-old American who, until recently, had been living in Toronto for about a year on a work visa. I work in marketing, mostly freelance gigs, and the contract that brought me to Canada ended, but I stuck around because, well, Canada's chill. I'd been surviving on odd freelance jobs, DoorDash runs, and selling vintage crap on Etsy while waiting on a new job offer. Anyway, about 3 months ago, my friend Liv, who works in film and photography, asked me to help out with a shoot she was doing for a local startup food brand. She said they just needed a wholesome, rugged-looking guy to be the face of their maple syrup. I was like, sure, sounds ridiculous, I'm in. She said it paid $500 for the day, which at that point was more than I had in my bank account. So I show up to this tiny cabin-style studio in the woods outside Ottawa, wearing a flannel shirt, boots, and with 3 days of beard growth. Liv said I needed Paul Bunyan lumberjack vibes. The shoot was hilarious. They had me chopping wood, tapping fake maple trees, pouring syrup on pancakes in slow motion, even holding a baby goat for some reason. I didn't ask questions. They gave me a bottle of the syrup at the end, which, I gotta say, slaps, and I left thinking, cool, that's the end of that. 2 weeks later, I start getting tagged in stuff on Instagram. A bunch of Toronto foodie accounts are posting photos of this new, authentic Canadian maple syrup brand, and it's me on all the labels. I'm holding the damn goat. The tagline is from our forest to your family. People are joking about hot syrup guy and making memes out of me. One account photoshopped me into the Canadian $5 bill. Then things got weird. Apparently, the startup did a soft launch at a big local farmer's market, and my rugged mug made a bit of a stir. A local morning show called Sunrise North wanted to do a feature on the syrup, and guess who they wanted for the interview? Me. Now, I tried to tell Liv, I'm not actually Canadian, and she was like, it's just an interview. Play it up a bit, they'll never check. She even wrote me a little script. Grew up in Muskoka, family tradition of syrup harvesting, blah blah. I was hesitant, but she promised it'd be good exposure for my freelance work. Against my better judgment, I agreed. So, I go on this cheesy morning show dressed like a Canadian stereotype. Flannel, toque, work boots. I tell them about how my granddad taught me to tap trees with love and how we use only sustainable, family-first methods. I talked about syrup like it was a religion. Turns out the show has a national audience. Suddenly, the video blows up. Like, really blows up. People are calling me the syrup whisperer. The brand gets picked up by a major grocery chain. I get asked to do another interview, this time for CBC Radio. I say yes again because at this point I've fully spiraled into my own lie. The CBC piece digs deeper. They send a reporter to do a day-in-the-life piece. Liv and I frantically stage a sugar shack in her uncle's backyard, borrow a dog, and try to make it look like a family business. I even got my neighbor to pretend to be my uncle, Donnie. This charade somehow works. The piece airs. Suddenly, I'm being called a national treasure. One of the articles literally says I'm the face of Canadian authenticity in a syrup bottle. Then comes the call from immigration. Apparently, my sudden national fame drew attention to the fact that my visa had expired. Now, I knew I was supposed to leave when my original work visa ended, but I'd applied for an extension and thought I was in the clear while it processed. Turns out I missed a crucial email asking for more documents. I'd been living in Canada without status for over 2 months. Cue absolute panic. The government doesn't care that I'm a maple syrup icon. They don't care about hot syrup guy. They care that I lied on national television, presented myself as a Canadian citizen, and technically committed visa fraud by working. The interviews and promo stuff counted as work. Next thing I know, I'm being politely escorted out of my apartment by 2 very apologetic but firm immigration officers. I'm told I'm being deported and possibly banned from re-entering Canada for at least a year. I try explaining it was all just a photo shoot, that I didn't mean for any of this to happen, but it's too late. The media thing made it worse. They thought I was using the attention to boost my career. As I'm being escorted to the airport, one of the officers actually says, "You really do look like you make syrup though." Salt in the wound. So now I'm back in Buffalo, staying at my parents' place, applying for jobs, and trying to lay low while the hot syrup guy memes keep circulating online. Apparently, the syrup brand replaced me with a bearded French-Canadian man named Luke who actually owns a sugar bush. Luke looks exactly like me if I'd aged 10 years and smoked a pack a day. Sometimes I see my face on syrup bottles online. My friend sent me a TikTok where someone turned my interview into an AI voice filter. The worst part? The syrup actually won a small business award last week. My photo is still on the trophy. Moral of the story: never lie on live TV, especially in Canada. They'll politely ruin your life. TIFU by becoming the neighborhood's mysterious porch phantom and accidentally causing a minor police investigation. Let me start by saying that I am not a criminal, a stalker, or a weirdo. At least I thought I wasn't. I'm a 33-year-old guy who works remotely, loves a quiet life in a quiet cul-de-sac, and up until 3 months ago, my biggest thrill was watching birds fight over seeds in my backyard. But then my neighbor's dog pooped on my welcome mat. Now, I didn't see it happen, but the evidence was undeniable.
I don't own a dog.
My doormat was the only one with a perfectly coiled offering. I cleaned it up, slightly annoyed, but told myself it was a one-time thing. Life happens.
Dogs poop. Cool.
The next week, it happened again.
And again.
By week 4, I was losing it. I tried being diplomatic. I knocked on doors. Hey, has anyone seen a dog off-leash lately? Haha, some poop's been showing up on my porch. Weird, right? No one knew anything. They all smiled that tight suburban smile that says, I will absolutely lie to avoid conflict. So, I decided I would handle it like a rational adult, with a petty, anonymous revenge campaign. I printed out a sign that said, Please curb your dog. My welcome mat is in a toilet, and stuck it right in the flower bed next to my front door. Bold, but still subtle enough to maintain plausible deniability. It disappeared overnight. Now I was convinced someone knew. They knew their dog was pooping on my porch, and they were mocking me. So, I escalated. I bought a cheap motion-activated camera and set it up in the peephole of my front door. It took about 3 nights to capture the little bastard, a fluffy white Pomeranian, trotting up with all the confidence in the world, squatting right on the mat like it was his own personal ensuite bathroom. I took a screenshot and printed it out, slapped it on the sign, along with a caption, Caught in the act. You know who you are. The next day, that sign was gone too. This became a twisted little routine. I'd post a new sign, sometimes with pictures, sometimes with sarcastic poems. Roses are red, violets are blue. This dog loves my porch, more than you do. Every time, it would vanish within 24 hours. It was like I had a nemesis, an invisible enemy in a cul-de-sac of smiling, lawn-obsessed sociopaths. Then I had an idea. Not a good one, just an idea. What if, instead of signs, I returned the favor? I bought a small bag of plastic fake dog poop online. Extremely realistic. Honestly, disturbingly realistic. I scattered 3 of them around my neighbor's lawn at night. The neighbor who I suspected owned the Pomeranian. I figure it was petty, harmless, and maybe they get the message. The next morning, I peeked out the window. They were furious. I watched from behind the blinds as the guy marched around his yard, swearing and holding one of the fake turds between 2 fingers like a cursed artifact. He threw it into a trash bag and stormed back inside. I felt a little bad. I told myself I'd stop. But then it got worse. About 3 days later, I was coming back from the grocery store when I saw a group of neighbors talking animatedly on the sidewalk. When they saw me, they got quiet. One of them, this lady who always dresses like she's going to a brunch that doesn't exist, asked if I'd seen anything weird lately. I played dumb. Weird how? She leaned in, lowered her voice, and said, Someone's been leaving things on people's porches. Apparently, it wasn't just fake poop anymore. Someone had started leaving other random items. A baby's shoe, a cassette tape, a single glove. One neighbor found an old remote with no batteries on their welcome mat. None of it made sense. Now I was freaking out. I hadn't left anything but the poop. Someone had taken my prank and evolved it into an actual cryptic campaign of porch harassment. It became a topic on the neighborhood Facebook group. Mysterious porch items was the hottest thread for a week. Theories ranged from a prankster teen to a confused elderly person, to some dark ritualistic undertone no one wanted to say out loud, but everyone was thinking. One neighbor installed a full Ring camera setup. Another started sleeping with their porch light on. I heard someone say they contacted the HOA to see if they could ban porch loitering after 9 p.m. Then the cops got involved. Apparently, someone reported a suspicious person on a doorbell camera. The blurry footage showed a figure in a hoodie walking up to a house at 1:12 a.m. and placing what looked like a single sock on the welcome mat before walking away. It wasn't me. but I recognized the hoodie. It belonged to my neighbor's teenage daughter. Suddenly, it all clicked. She must have seen my original Sign Wars and decided to take it further, maybe for laughs or TikTok or whatever teens do now. I was the originator, but she had turned it into performance art. And now the cops were circling the block, asking questions. I panicked. I deleted all the photos from my peephole camera, tore down the few remaining signs in my garage, took the rest of the fake poop and buried it like cursed treasure in the backyard. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I baked apology cookies. 6 batches. I hand-delivered them to every house on the block, including the family with the Pomeranian, claiming I was just trying out new recipes and wanted to spread some sweetness because the neighborhood's been kind of tense lately, right? Most people accepted them awkwardly. One guy asked if they were edibles. A few days later, the whole porch phantom thing sort of died down. The Facebook thread went quiet. No more items appeared. I think the teen got bored, or maybe her parents found out. I'll never know for sure. But I still can't make eye contact with half the people on this street without feeling like they know that I started this, that I was the poop pioneer. My welcome mat has been clean for weeks now. Not a single offense. But every time I hear a dog bark or see a hoodie at night, I get a little twitchy. Because deep down, I know the phantom could rise again. This happened last summer, and I'm only now able to laugh about it. I, 29M, went to a massive music festival in Belgium with some friends. I'm from the UK, but this festival attracts people from all over Europe. We had set up our tents, cracked open some warm beers, and were just soaking in the first night's vibes when I met her. Let's call her Laura. Blonde, artsy, piercing eyes, and this chill confidence that made everyone shut up when she spoke. She was German there with a few of her uni friends. We ended up hanging around the same bonfire that night, and we clicked. I've never been one for love at first sight cliches, but I swear something shifted in the air. We talked until 3 a.m., half drunk on cheap beer, and shared stories. At one point, she said she appreciated how effortlessly I switched between English and German. Here's where the problem started. See, I don't speak German. Not fluently. I know a few words from Duolingo and a semester in university I barely remember. But I had maybe drunkenly thrown out a couple phrases. Asterisk, asterisk, wie geht's? Ich liebe Musik, and some random Rammstein lyrics that sounded cooler in my head than they probably were. She must have assumed I was fluent. And in my slightly inebriated state, my ego kicked in. I said, Ja, ich spreche Deutsch ziemlich gut, and doubled down. Over the next couple of days, Laura and I got closer. Her friends would drop in and out of our group, and they all were German speakers. So now I was playing this awkward balancing act of pretending to understand them, nodding along when they laughed, throwing in the occasional ACH so, or Jano, and hoping no one noticed I was full of it. I even downloaded Google Translate and started discreetly typing in phrases under the table when I needed to respond to something. Then came Sunday, last day of the festival. Laura and I were laying in a hammock strung between 2 trees, half asleep in the sun, when she said, "You should come visit me in Berlin." And I, being the idiot I am, said, "Definitely. I've always wanted to move there for a while." She smiled. Then she said something long, in German, like really fast. I caught maybe one word, Wohngemeinschaft, which I think means roommate. I laughed nervously and said, Ja klar. She looked confused and repeated part of what she said, slower. I still didn't get it. I panicked. So I smiled and kissed her to avoid answering.
Cute, right?
Except that night, we met up with her group again for one last drink before heading to our tents. Laura was holding my hand. We were all sharing a bottle of something that tasted like regret and Red Bull, and her best friend, this guy named Janik, said something in German to me directly. I just nodded and said, Naderlich. Dead silence. Then he repeated it, this time slower, and I realized the tone was completely different, like he was challenging me. Laura turned to me, confused, and asked something like, "Wait, do you actually speak German?" I was cornered. I felt all their eyes on me. I tried to bluff again with a ja, ich, bisschen, which didn't help. Then Janik switched to flawless English and said, You know I asked if you were planning to propose to Lara next week, right? Cue laughter from the group. Some of them thought it was hilarious. Lara didn't. We walked away from the group, and she asked why I had pretended the whole time. I admitted everything. The Duolingo, the Google Translate under the table, the panic kisses.
She didn't yell.
She just looked deeply disappointed and said, I thought you were honest. I liked that about you. I tried to explain that I was trying to impress her, that I felt like a nobody next to her confidence and her cool Berlin life, but she just shook her head and said, I would have liked you anyway.
Oof.
The rest of the night was awkward. We said goodbye with a weird side hug and no real closure. I flew back to the UK feeling like a total fraud. A week later, she blocked me on Instagram. But the humiliation didn't end there. One of my friends, who had been suspicious of my German skills from the beginning, made a remix of our conversations, complete with auto-tuned clips of me saying, "Jano," over some weird techno beat. He titled it The German Job. He played it at his housewarming party in front of everyone we knew. Even worse, the chorus was just a loop of me saying Ich liebe Musik in an increasingly desperate tone. But here's the kicker. I've actually started learning German properly now. Not for Lara, but for myself. It's hard, humbling, and honestly kind of fun. Every time I mess up a case or misgender a noun, I remember that weekend and cringe a little but also laugh.
So yeah.
TIFU by pretending to be someone I wasn't, got called out in front of a bunch of polyglots, lost a girl I genuinely liked, and ended up as a joke track at parties. But at least now I can tell this story in German. TIFU by becoming that guy at my girlfriend's family funeral. So this happened last weekend, and I'm still getting texts from relatives I didn't even know existed. My girlfriend, let's call her Ellie, and I have been dating for a little over a year. Things have been great. We moved in together recently, and everything felt like it was naturally heading towards something serious. I hadn't met her extended family yet, just her mom and little brother, and both seemed to like me. Well, liked me. Her grandfather passed away last week. He was apparently the patriarch of the family, Vietnam vet, classic tough but sweet grandpa energy. Ellie was devastated, and even though I hadn't met him, I offered to go to the funeral for support. She was really touched and said she'd love that, so I took a day off work, packed a suit, and we flew out to Ohio where her family lives. I should probably preface this by saying I have a somewhat sensitive stomach. Not in an I can't handle dairy way, but more like I roll the dice every time I eat something new. But I figured I'd be fine. It's a funeral. What could go wrong? We land. We go straight to her uncle's place where the wake is being held, and it's a classic Midwest spread. Crockpots everywhere. Meatballs. Little smokies. A mysterious casserole that may or may not have contained mayonnaise. I was starving, so I dove in head first. Big mistake. About an hour in, I start feeling that ominous gurgle in my gut. You know the one. The early warning siren that says you've got about 20 minutes to get your affairs in order. I try to play it cool, sip some water, breathe deeply, keep chatting with her aunts and uncles. But my stomach was like, no sir, you do not get to chill today. I excuse myself and find the bathroom down the hall. I lock the door, sit down, and what happens next could only be described as an exorcism. I'm sweating. I'm gripping the sink. I'm pretty sure I whispered, "Tell my story" at one point. But after 15 minutes of sheer intestinal warfare, I finally feel human again. Now here's where the real TIFU begins. I flush. Nothing happens. I flush again. The water rises. 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 I'm watching this unfold in slow motion like a horror movie. I try the plunger. Nothing. I try jiggling the handle like it's going to magically solve this biohazard I've created. It does not. At this point, I'm panicking. It's been 25 minutes. Ellie texted me once. Everything okay? I don't respond because what the hell do I say? The toilet is now a crime scene. The kind that requires a hazmat team. And here's the worst part. The bathroom has one of those old-school fans instead of a real ventilation system, so the aroma is now fully permeating into the hallway. I crack the window, but it's tiny and doesn't do much. I open the cabinet below the sink in desperation, hoping to find some magical solution, and instead find a single white candle, a lighter, and a bottle of some suspiciously generic air freshener.
So here I am,
Half naked, sweating, lighting a candle like I'm summoning a demon, spraying air freshener like I'm trying to cover up a murder. I put the candle on the back of the toilet and hope it at least masks some of the scent. Then I hear it, knocking, followed by a voice. Hey, we're starting the memorial slides in a sec. You okay in there? It's Ellie. I mumble back something like, be right out. I flush one last time out of desperation. Big mistake. The candle tips. It falls onto a wad of toilet paper, which, of course, ignites. I react immediately. I grab the burning tissue with my bare hand, throw it in the sink, and turn on the water. Crisis averted. Or so I think. Because in my adrenaline-soaked panic, I didn't notice the candle wax dripping down the back of the toilet, onto the floor, onto a fuzzy little rug,
which is now smoldering.
There is literal smoke coming out from under the door when I finally fling it open. Imagine this. A room full of mourning family members, faces red with grief, turning toward the hallway as I burst out like some deranged priest who just battled Beelzebub in the powder room. My hair is wild. My face is pale. There's a huge sweat stain down the back of my shirt, and I'm clutching a damp hand towel like it's my last connection to reality. Ellie just stares, her mouth slightly open. Her mom has a hand over her nose. Her uncle, whose house this is, makes a beeline toward the bathroom, and I hear him yell, "What the hell happened in here?" I try to explain. I really do, but no words are coming.
Just sounds.
The closest I get to a sentence is, there was a situation with the candle. We didn't stay for the slideshow. We didn't stay for dessert. We drove straight to a Motel 6, where I spent the night apologizing between gulps of Pepto and trying to convince Ellie that this is not representative of who I am as a person. She hasn't broken up with me yet, which is a miracle in itself. But I'm now known throughout her family as the guy who lit the toilet on fire at Grandpa's wake. Apparently her cousin even made a meme. It's me with red devil eyes photoshopped onto my face, holding a toilet brush like a sword, with the caption, asterisk, hell hath no fury like that casserole. Asterisk. Safe to say, I will never attend another family function without first fasting for 48 hours and bringing my own plunger. Hey, friends! If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. So this happened over the course of about 3 months, and I'm only just now realizing how deep into the rabbit hole I've fallen. I live in a mid-sized apartment building in a city that shall remain unnamed for reasons that will become painfully obvious. I'm a 29-year-old guy, live alone, WFH in a data analytics role, and until recently, the most interaction I had with my neighbors was awkward nods while waiting for the elevator. It all started when I ordered a custom neon sign for my home office. I'd just gotten promoted and thought I'd treat myself. I wanted something that looked cool on Zoom calls, so I went with a sleek, minimalistic design that just said, "The answer lies within." I saw it on a sticker at a bookstore once and thought it was cryptic and mysterious in a fun, nerdy way. The sign arrived. I installed it. It glowed a soft, warm orange and gave my apartment this weirdly calming vibe.
Cool.
Great purchase. Except the placement of my desk and the layout of my living room meant the sign was visible from the window at night. A few days later, I get a knock on the door. It's this guy from the 7th floor, don't know his name, I'll call him Dreads Guy. He looks kinda spaced out, like he just woke up from a nap he took in a hammock in the astral plane. He tells me he saw my sign from the courtyard and asks what it means. I laugh awkwardly and say, honestly, I just thought it looked cool. But he kind of nods like he understands something deeper. Like I don't even know what I've tapped into. He thanks me and leaves. Weird, but whatever. Over the next week, a few more people knock. A middle-aged woman who lives across the hall, a barista from the cafe downstairs, even the maintenance guy. All saying similar things, saw your sign, got curious. It just spoke to me. I started jokingly calling it my accidental cult beacon. My friend Max came over and I told him about it and he said I should lean into it. Start holding meetings, see what happens.
We laughed about it.
Then drank 2 bottles of wine. Then created a stupid little flyer that said, "Seeking answers? Join us in the pursuit of inner truth. Meet by the fountain, Sunday, 8 p.m. The answer lies within." We printed 6 and taped them up in the building's stairwell and elevator. I didn't expect anyone to show up. I figured the security guard would take them down first. Sunday rolls around. I almost forgot. At 7:55 p.m. I head down with a speaker, some lo-fi ambient music, and a half-baked guided meditation script I Googled that afternoon. There are already 11 people waiting by the fountain.
I nearly noped out right then. But someone saw me and waved.
So I smiled, walked over, put on the music, sat cross-legged, and started reading the script. People closed their eyes. People breathed deeply. One guy cried. After 30 minutes, they clapped. Someone brought homemade tea. Someone else asked when we'd meet again. I said, "Same time next week?" This continued. Every Sunday, the group got bigger. People brought yoga mats. One girl painted the phrase, "The answer lies within," on her jean jacket. A guy showed up with a copy of the Tao Te Ching and said it resonated. Someone made a WhatsApp group. They added me without asking. I should have stopped it there. But part of me was curious. This was the most social interaction I'd had in years. And honestly, it felt kind of good to lead something. To be listened to matter. So I started writing my own meditations. Short ones. Vague platitudes. Stuff like, "What you resist persists. What you allow transforms. Truth is a mirror shattered by perception. Each of us holds a shard. Breathe in intention. Breathe out illusion." I mean, it's not exactly profound, but people loved it. They started quoting me in the group chat. They called me the Wayseer. Someone left a basket of oranges at my door with a note that said, "Gratitude for your guidance." It was getting out of hand. But I still didn't realize how out of hand until the incident. 2 weeks ago, someone asked if I could bless their baby. They were dead serious. I panicked and said I had to consult the teachings and close the door. Then I sat in my bathroom for an hour and just stare at myself in the mirror thinking, what the F is happening? Asterisk. The next day, Dred's guy left a USB drive in my mailbox labeled Ascension. It was full of audio files, him chanting, whispering, sometimes just breathing for 30 minutes straight. In one track, he's crying and saying, "The answer lies within," over and over like a mantra. I realized I had to end it. That Sunday, I went down to the fountain with the intention of disbanding the group. I was going to explain everything, tell them it was a joke, and that I'm not enlightened. I'm just a guy who thought a neon sign looked cool. But when I arrived, there were over 40 people. Some wore robes. One woman shaved her head. A dude had a tattoo of my face with the words, "Within him lies the answer," underneath. I blacked out. Not literally, but mentally. I couldn't do it. I gave another meditation. I made it extra confusing, hoping they'd think it was nonsense and get bored. They clapped harder than ever. The WhatsApp group has 73 members now. People from other buildings are joining. Someone's set up a website. They're asking me to live stream meditations. Someone wants to fly in from Arizona. I don't know anyone from Arizona. I'm writing this in my closet with the lights off because someone knocked 10 minutes ago, and I'm scared it's another seeker. I don't know how to get out of this. I accidentally created a cult, and I think they're about to register as a nonprofit. Please send help. Or at least new meditation quotes. TIFU by accidentally becoming my neighbor's emergency contact and ruining their life in under 48 hours. So this started about 2 months ago when I moved into a new apartment complex in a mid-sized city. Nothing too fancy, but had a decent gym, good lighting, and most importantly, wasn't crawling with students like my last place. My neighbor, a quiet, older woman named Carol, lived across the hall from me. We didn't talk much, just the occasional nod in the hallway or a good morning when grabbing mail. She was probably in her 60s, lived alone, and had a cat I could occasionally hear yowling when I came home late. The actual fuck-up started last week, when the building management sent out a digital form to update emergency contacts and maintenance preferences. I was filling mine out when I noticed something strange. Somehow, the autofill had already populated my emergency contact as Carol M., my neighbor. I found it funny and took a screenshot, even debated texting my brother like, "Hey, guess I'm ditching you for Carol." I meant to change it, but life distracted me, and I submitted the form without double-checking. Mildly dumb, but not catastrophic, right? Turns out there must have been some sort of system bug, because Carol also got autofilled with me as her emergency contact. She submitted her form too. Neither of us realized this until Tuesday, when I got a phone call at 3:12 a.m. "Hello, is this Mr. Daniel Price?" Groggy and half-naked in bed, I grunted. Yeah. "This is St. Luke's Hospital. You're listed as the emergency contact for Carol. She was brought in about an hour ago. Can you come down here?" And that's when things began to spiral. I had no idea what happened to Carol. I threw on clothes, chugged half a Red Bull from my fridge, and rushed to the hospital in a half-panicked, half-confused state. At the ER desk, I was treated like I was family. They told me she'd slipped in the shower and hit her head. She was conscious but disoriented, and they needed someone to authorize some basic treatment forms because she was mumbling nonsense. I was too stunned to explain I wasn't actually her family, and to be honest, in my sleep-deprived state, I figured, okay, I'll just sign this, and someone real will take over in the morning. I ended up staying there for 4 hours. Carol was pretty out of it, asking me to feed her cat, something about her green pills, which the nurses told me not to worry about, and something about the letter in the drawer. I thought she was talking about a will and started sweating bullets. Eventually, they admitted her for overnight observation. Before leaving, I dropped my number with a nurse in case Carol needed anything. I came home around 7:45 a.m. to a voicemail from the front desk of our apartment complex. The message: "Hi, Mr. Price. We were informed Ms. Carol M. was taken to the hospital and you are listed as the emergency contact. Her cat is making quite a bit of noise. Can you access her unit and check on it?" Okay. Reasonable request. I already had a key. Carol had given me one a few weeks ago when the smoke detectors were going off, and she was out grocery shopping. So I let myself in. That damn cat was a gremlin. As soon as I opened the door, it bolted past me and down the hallway like it had been plotting its escape for years. I chased it, barefoot, might I add, through the hall, down 2 flights of stairs, and finally into the underground garage, where it disappeared under a silver Nissan. I had to bribe it out with a piece of beef jerky from my gym bag. By the time I got it back inside, I was bleeding from my shin, my shirt was half torn, and I looked like I'd lost a fight with a raccoon. But hey, I saved the cat. End of story, right?
Wrong.
The next day, I got a call from Carol's niece, who had apparently been contacted by the hospital after I left. She was furious that I'd been listed as the emergency contact and accused me of coercing Carol into making me her power of attorney. What? I didn't even know I could do that. I tried to explain, but she wasn't having it. She said things like, "I knew she was too trusting, and did you do this to get the apartment when she passes?" Like I was some kind of long-con grifter. Then she asked, "What did you do with the letter?" I asked what she meant. She said Carol kept a sealed letter in her nightstand for her niece in case anything happened. Apparently, it had her safe combination, some family heirloom instructions, and other stuff I now wish I had never heard of. I told her I hadn't touched it. She didn't believe me. She still doesn't believe me. Later that day, the complex emailed me about a pending investigation related to an unauthorized entry and disturbance of another residence unit, Carol's. Apparently, Carol had called from the hospital and told staff she never asked me to go in and didn't remember giving me a key. I wanted to scream. I even showed them a text she sent me months ago saying, "Here's the spare key, just in case there's ever an emergency." But apparently that wasn't good enough. So now I'm being investigated by building management. Her niece thinks I'm some creepy scammer, and Carol's memory is fuzzy enough that she's not sure whether she gave me the key or I found it. As of yesterday, I got served a notice saying I may be liable for damages related to the cat getting loose. It scratched someone's Range Rover. How? And that I may be banned from acting in any official capacity for Carol moving forward. I tried to reach out to her again, but I was told all communication has to go through her family now. So, to summarize, I became someone's emergency contact by a literal autofill mistake. Accidentally got medical power of attorney for a woman I barely know. Chased a devil cat through my building in boxer briefs and gym shoes. Am now under suspicion of grandniece gaslighting and potential letter theft. And might be liable for vet bills, a scratched luxury car, and a traumatized feline. I swear to God, I was just trying to do the right thing. Now I'm seriously considering moving. Or joining a witness protection program. Either one feels appropriate at this point. TIFU by accidentally live streaming my company's confidential meeting to my gaming channel. I work in IT for a mid-sized tech company. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and I get to work from home 4 days a week. I also moonlight as a small-time Twitch streamer. Mostly just a few dozen people watching me play strategy games and talk nonsense, but it's fun, helps me unwind, and the little extra income isn't bad either. So this all happened last Tuesday. Every quarter, our company holds an all-hands meeting where the C-suite gives updates, shares financials, goals, product roadmaps, some pretty sensitive stuff. Because of the WFH setup, these meetings are done over Zoom, and the link is emailed out with a note about confidentiality and internal distribution only. That day, I had a gaming stream scheduled for later that evening. I was messing around earlier trying to set up some overlays and alerts for Twitch, which meant OBS, Open Broadcaster Software, was running in the background. Now, usually I'm super careful about separating my work environment from my streaming setup. 2 different desktops, different user profiles, different audio inputs, the works. But last week had been chaotic. My cat had been sick, I was sleep-deprived, and honestly running on fumes. So, while joining the company-wide Zoom meeting, I forgot that I had OBS still set to stream. Worse, I had linked Zoom as a video source for testing something the day before and never removed it. So, at exactly 10 a.m., as our CEO starts the meeting with his usual, "All right, let's jump in," OBS goes live. My Twitch channel? Also live. The title of the stream? Crushing Noobs with Science. Let's go. What followed was nearly 2 hours of internal business strategy, upcoming product plans, financial reports, and team restructuring plans broadcast directly to the internet. And not just that. Because I was multitasking, yes, I'm a degenerate, I had my mic on. So, for the duration of the meeting, Twitch viewers got not only a corporate stream, but also occasional commentary from yours truly. Things like, "Oh, come on, we're investing there? She said that last quarter too, I don't buy it. Wait, we're laying off who? Jesus." The stream was up for 97 minutes before someone from my Twitch mod team, shout out to Tim, you absolute legend, messaged me frantically on Discord. "Dude, you're live. You're streaming your work meeting. Turn it OFF." Cue the stomach drop feeling. I alt-tabbed, saw the little red on OBS, and immediately shut everything down. I just stared at the screen, mouth dry, brain going full Windows 95 error. I think I sat like that for a full minute, just contemplating every life decision that brought me to that moment. Then came the emails. First from a coworker, then another. Then one from my manager, subject line, "Urgent. Please call me ASAP." Turns out someone in the company saw the stream.
How?
Their roommate follows my Twitch. I'm not even kidding. The roommate saw my stream title pop up, clicked out of curiosity, and then ran to tell them. Word spread faster than malware on a bad network. By 1 p.m., legal was involved. I got pulled into a very tense Zoom meeting with my manager, our head of IT security, someone from HR, and a lawyer. It was like a digital firing squad. I explained what happened, owned up completely, showed them my OBS logs and screenshots, and confirmed that it was an accident. Here's where it got really dicey. The meeting contained forward-looking financials and internal org changes not yet publicly announced. That means potential SEC violations. Depending on the interpretation, I might have just committed a massive compliance breach. They took the stream down, Twitch was cooperative, and I had to provide a list of all followers, mods, and anyone who might have seen the stream. Twitch reported 43 concurrent viewers during the leak, but that didn't include any restreams or screen recordings, which is still TBD. After 2 agonizing days, I was told I wouldn't be fired, hallelujah. But I am on a final written warning, and my access to sensitive information has been temporarily revoked. I also had to take a 2-week unpaid suspension and attend mandatory InfoSEC training, plus make a formal apology to the executive team. My manager said, and I quote, "We're not mad, we're just shocked." Like, who even does that? As for Twitch, my channel got flagged for unauthorized broadcasting of proprietary content. I'm suspended for 30 days. I also lost 2 sponsors and my average viewer count dropped by half. I've become a meme on a couple Discord servers, apparently. The best part? My stream overlays, which were up the whole time, included a little dancing anime character in the bottom right corner and a poggers alert every time someone followed. So viewers got to watch the CFO break down Q2 revenue projections while poggers flashed on screen accompanied by air horn sounds. I've since separated my work and streaming setups completely. 2 machines, different networks, and a giant sticky note on each monitor saying, "Are you streaming?"
So yeah,
I may have nearly gotten fired, possibly violated federal law, tanked my side hustle, and became an involuntary corporate whistleblower all before lunch on a Tuesday. Let this be a warning. Always double-check what you're broadcasting, especially if it involves sensitive spreadsheets and anime alerts. TIFU by accidentally sending a very personal video to the entire company. This happened last Friday, and I still feel like I've aged 10 years since. So I, 29M, work in the marketing department of a mid-sized company. We're not Google, but we're big enough to have a few hundred employees spread across a few cities. My role is a mix of digital marketing and internal communications. This means I get to do all the fun stuff like team newsletters, training videos, and maintaining the company's internal portal. I'm also one of the few people with access to the all-staff mailing list. Now, every month we send out a fun little internal video as part of our employee engagement thing. You know, birthday shout-outs, short updates, sometimes funny little skits with people from different departments. Harmless stuff. It's one of the few things people actually enjoy reading. This month, I had the bright idea to spice things up and make a day in the life style montage featuring different employees from various offices. So all week, I've been gathering clips, editing, adding cheesy royalty-free music, the works. The final version was supposed to be a 3-minute video featuring clips of people making coffee, team meetings, silly bloopers, and ending with a cheesy, "You're all the real MVPs" kind of message. Here's where the problem starts. On Thursday night, I was working late editing the final cut at home. I had about 20 different drafts of the video saved on my desktop. To keep things organized, I'd been naming them things like Office Day_Final, MP4, and Office Day_Real Final, MP4, and eventually, as all editors do, Office Day_Real Realifinal, MP4. Now, in a completely separate part of my life, I've been doing couples therapy with my girlfriend. Let's call her Amy. One of our recent assignments was to make a video letter to each other talking about our struggles, love languages, and some, intimate topics that we were too embarrassed to say in person. It was her idea, not mine. But I went along with it because growth, I guess. So earlier in the week, I had filmed this video at home. Me, sitting on the couch, opening up about some very personal things. Like crying level personal. Stuff about my childhood. My insecurities. How I sometimes feel like a failure. And yes, even things about our sex life. Not raunchy, but definitely not for anyone else's ears or eyes. It was raw and emotional. I saved it on my desktop, so I could send it to her later. Its file name? Final.mp4. That's it. Just Final.mp4. You see where this is going. Friday morning rolls around. I'm half awake, chugging coffee, in a rush to meet the 9 a.m. internal newsletter deadline. I throw the video into the MailChimp campaign, write up the cheerful blurb, and click send to all staff. Roughly 540 employees. From interns to our C-suite. The email subject line? See what your coworkers have been up to this month. Smiley face. I go grab another cup of coffee and start getting emails within 10 minutes. At first, it's stuff like, hey, was this intentional? Or, dude, followed by a few screenshots and gifs of confused celebrities. I still hadn't opened the email myself yet. I figured maybe there was a typo or I'd left in a bad edit. Then my boss messages me on Teams. Are you okay? That's when the cold sweat started. I go back into the sent email, click the link to the embedded video, and immediately see my own face on my couch, beginning the most vulnerable monologue I have ever recorded. No intro music, no company logo, just me saying, Amy, I know this is weird, but I wanted to be really honest about how I've been feeling lately. I slammed my laptop shut like that would help. The next 20 minutes were chaos. I killed the MailChimp link, but it was too late. People had downloaded it. People had shared it. Some had uploaded it to our internal Slack with, wow, didn't expect to cry this early on a Friday. I wanted to bury myself under the building. HR called me within the hour. Thankfully, they were kind about it. More concerned about my well-being than the screw-up. One of them even said, honestly, that was the most human thing I've ever seen on the portal. I guess there's something weirdly beautiful about accidentally showing your vulnerable side to an entire corporate entity. Amy thought it was hilarious once she got over the initial shock. She said, well, at least you didn't say anything bad about me. I didn't. Thank God. By mid-afternoon, it became kind of a joke in the company. Someone made a meme of me photoshopped onto a therapy couch with the caption, "This could have been an email." A few people reached out privately to say they really related to some of the stuff I said. One guy in accounting even wrote, I showed it to my wife. We both cried. Thank you. I still don't know how to feel about that. My boss gave me a free day off for mental health, and the CTO sent me a coffee mug that says final_really final_2 and P4 on it. I now triple-check every video I upload, have moved all personal files off my work machine, and renamed every private video I own to something like do_not_sen_this_ever_you_idiot. MOV. So yeah, that's how I became the unwilling star of a company-wide group therapy session. TIFU by agreeing to house sit for my boss and accidentally destroying his prized koi pond, ruining a marriage proposal, and becoming a neighborhood villain in less than 48 hours. Let me set the scene. My boss, who I'll call Mr. Donnelly, is one of those guys who seems to live 10 years in the future. His house is one of those architectural monstrosities with glass walls, minimalist everything, and a voice-activated toilet. He's rich in a way that makes everything in his life feel curated. So when he asked me, a lowly tech support guy at the office, if I could house sit while he and his wife went to Napa for a weekend, I said yes before he even finished the sentence. The instructions were simple. Bring in the mail, water the indoor plants once, feed the koi fish once a day, and don't touch the wine cellar. Easy enough. He even offered me $1,000 for the weekend. $1,000. For 2 days of glorified plant babysitting. Now, I know nothing about fish. I've killed every goldfish I've ever owned through a combination of overfeeding and neglect. But I figured koi were just fancy goldfish with a better publicist. I could manage. Day 1 goes great. I water the plants, wave to the security cameras like I'm in a heist movie, and feed the koi with this tiny scoop from a custom container labeled Koi Nutrition Blend. Do not overfeed. I give them 1 scoop. They swarm to the surface like piranhas in an action movie, and I leave feeling like Poseidon. Then day 2 happens. I show up Saturday afternoon, a little hungover from the night before, and notice something weird. The koi are just floating near the surface, barely moving. One is sideways. Another looks like it's trying to backstroke, but with all the energy of a dying Roomba. Panic sets in. I check the container. Still full. I didn't overfeed them. Maybe they're cold? I Google, why are my koi acting drunk? The answers range from normal behavior to they're dying. I go with the first one and throw in a second scoop of food just in case they're hungry. Then I notice the water level looks low. Not dramatically, but just enough to make me paranoid. Maybe there's a leak? Maybe they're dehydrated? That's a thing for fish, right? I see a hose coiled nearby and figure I'll just top off the pond a bit. Simple. except the hose is connected to some fancy filtration thing with more knobs than my car stereo. I turn one, nothing. Turn another, a gurgle. Turn a third, and suddenly the hose whips to life like a viper, knocking over a lantern and spraying directly into the pond. I panic and drop the hose into the water. Now it's flooding. I scramble to shut it off but end up turning the wrong knob and activating some kind of fountain mode. Water shoots 10 feet into the air and crashes back down, soaking me and turning the koi pond into what looks like a fish jacuzzi. After a solid minute of flailing, I finally get it shut off. The pond is now overfilled and churning like a blender. The koi are nowhere to be seen. I kneel beside the pond, soaked and smelling faintly of chlorine and despair. And then, like a horror movie, one koi floats up, belly up. I killed Mr. Donnelly's koi. These weren't normal koi either. I find a laminated plaque near the garden that reads, "In loving memory of Shogun, 2003 to 2021. I look it up later. Some koi can live 30 plus years and cost thousands. Thousands.
Per fish.
I spiral. I call my friend Jake, who shows up 30 minutes later with beer and even worse ideas. We agree, we can't tell Mr. Donnelly. Jake suggests replacing the koi. I laugh. Then I realize he's serious. We drive an hour to some sketchy aquatic pet store in a strip mall. The guy there sells us 4 koi that look vaguely like Mr. Donnelly's. They're smaller, paler, and definitely cheaper, but they swim. That's good enough. We drive back, sneak the fish into the pond, and dispose of the floaters like it's a mafia job. I bury them under a rhododendron. I Google if koi haunt you. Turns out they don't. I go to bed that night thinking, I might actually pull it off. Then Sunday happens. I return in the morning to find the koi pond empty.
Dry.
Bone dry. Apparently, the overfilling broke some sensor or overflow valve or whatever. The pond drained completely. The replacement koi are gone. There's a wet trail leading to the storm drain. I assume raccoons. Maybe a hawk. Maybe they just flopped their way to freedom, like in Finding Nemo. Now I'm standing in the backyard, staring at a dirt-lined crater that used to be a $15,000 koi paradise, when I hear someone call out, "Hey, is this the Donnelly's place?" I turn around to see a guy in a tuxedo. Behind him is a string quartet, a nervous woman in a dress, and a crowd of about 20 people holding phones. Long story short, Mr. Donnelly's nephew had planned a surprise engagement in the backyard that day. Mr. Donnelly gave him the all-clear to use the koi pond as the picturesque backdrop. Apparently, the koi will be a symbol of our growing love, was a key part of the proposal speech. Instead, the guy gets on one knee in front of what now looks like a dried-up drainage ditch. The woman says no. It's a whole thing. People scream. One old lady throws a dinner roll at me. The nephew storms off, the guests leave, and I'm left alone with the string quartet, who awkwardly pack up while pretending not to judge me. I spend the next 3 hours trying to refill the pond with buckets, because the hose is now mysteriously missing. Jake took it, I later find out, in case it was evidence. The water turns greenish-brown. I give up and cover the pond with a tarp I find in the garage. Mr. Donnelly gets back Sunday night. I tell him there was an issue with the filtration system and a small water feature malfunction. He nods, makes a note, and hands me the check like he's already decided to write me out of his will. On Monday, I come into work and my login doesn't work. My badge doesn't work. HR calls me into a meeting that ends with the phrase, "We're going in a different direction." Now I'm unemployed, haunted by ghost fish, and possibly responsible for the collapse of a marriage that never even got started.
But hey,
at least I still have the tarp. So this happened about 2 weeks ago, and I've just recently stopped wanting to melt into a puddle of shame every time I think about it. My friends say it's one of the most absurd things they've ever heard, so naturally, I'm offering it up to the altar of the internet. I, 29M, live in a medium-sized city where it seems like everyone knows someone who knows someone. This plays into what happened more than I could have anticipated. A bit of backstory. I got out of a 5-year relationship with my ex, Kelsey, about 10 months ago. It wasn't dramatic, more of a slow burn realization that we weren't aligned on what we wanted anymore. She was already seeing someone new a couple of months later, which stung at the time, but I got over it. We didn't block each other or anything, but we also haven't interacted since. Fast forward to the present. I've been dating again, nothing serious, but I'd recently started seeing someone named Mia, 27F. Super cool girl. Funny, artsy, gives off those chaotic good vibes that somehow just work. We've been on 4 dates and decided to go out to this mystery event I got invited to. Here's where I start screwing up. I got a physical invitation in the mail from someone named Jordan and Emily. I assumed it was one of my high school or college friends. There's a Jordan I knew from undergrad who throws these quirky themed parties once a year, and they always have food trucks and weird games and whatnot. This invite was vague, but kinda stylish. It read, "You are warmly invited to join us for an evening of love, laughter, and new beginnings. Dress to impress. Friday, 5 p.m., Crestwood Botanical Gardens." No other details. Just the names, date, time, and location. It looked fancy, but again, I figured Jordan had leveled up his party game. No RSVP info either, so I assumed it was casual enough to just show up. I texted Mia and said I had this mysterious invite and wanted to bring her. She was in. We got dressed up, me in a navy suit, her in this gorgeous dark green dress that made her look like an absolute forest goddess, and headed to the gardens. It was beautiful. Early evening sun filtering through trees, a string quartet playing in the distance, people milling around with wine glasses and champagne flutes. I still wasn't getting wedding vibes. Maybe it was a dinner party, I thought. A charity gala? That illusion shattered like a champagne glass on concrete the moment I saw the giant white floral archway and Kelsey, wearing a white wedding dress, walking down the aisle, with her dad, directly toward the man she left me for, some guy named Sean. I froze. Time slowed down. I turned to Mia, who was blissfully sipping her drink and marveling at the string lights. My brain was trying to play mental twister to figure out how in the ever-living hell I ended up here. Then I realized. Kelsey's full name is Kelsey Jordan Thompson. Jordan and Emily equals Kelsey and her new husband, Sean Emily's son. Jordan and Emily. The invite had come from them. Somehow, in either a cosmic joke or mail mix-up, they had sent me an invitation to her wedding. And like an idiot, I accepted. And brought a date. To my ex's wedding. Who does that? My first instinct was to quietly back away. Problem was, we had already mingled. People saw us. Someone had even complimented Mia on her dress and asked how we knew the couple. She said, "Oh, he's old friends with them." And the woman had smiled and nodded. We couldn't just Irish exit. That would be more suspicious. Also, there was the tiny issue of Mia not knowing any of this. I leaned over and whispered the situation to her, thinking she'd be horrified. Instead, she choked on her champagne and started laughing. Like, tears in her eyes laughing. She whispered back, "This is wild. We have to stay. I need to see how this plays out." And because I had long since lost control of the evening and possibly my life, I agreed. Dinner came. Speeches happened. And then the slideshow started. I wish I were making this up. The newlyweds had prepared a slideshow of their journey. Ah, how sweet, right? Until slide number 6. A photo of a group camping trip from 2019, long before Kelsey and I broke up. Who's in the photo? Me. Smiling, holding a beer, sitting next to Kelsey, who had her arm around me. It lingered on screen for a full 5 seconds. I saw people glancing at me. Someone whispered. I turned to Mia. Still fun. She was grinning ear to ear, nodding like she'd just won the lottery. Best date ever. At this point, I was sweating through my shirt. I could feel the awkward radiating off me like microwaves. I went to the bar and downed 2 drinks in quick succession. Tried to keep a low profile. And then, as if this couldn't spiral further, Kelsey approached us. She walked up with this oddly calm smile and said, "Hey, wow. I didn't know you got the invite." I guess it makes sense, though we weren't sure if we'd updated all the addresses. I stammered something like, "Yeah, must have slipped through," while Mia extended her hand and said, "Hi, I'm Mia. This has been a very interesting night." Kelsey, Either being the most gracious person on earth or simply not giving a damn, just smiled, said, "Well, thanks for coming," and walked off. We left not long after that before dancing started. On the way to the car, Mia burst out laughing again and said, "You know, I feel like I just lived a Netflix original rom-com in 2 hours." I asked if she wanted to go out again. She said, "Only if it's not another wedding." We've been on 3 more dates since. No weddings. No exes. Just me, praying I never get another vague invitation in the mail again. TIFU by letting my boss think I was in a cult for 2 months. This happened last year, but I only recently learned the full extent of the damage, so now it really feels like I ed up twice. To preface, I, 29M, work as a graphic designer at a mid-sized marketing firm. It's not a super uptight corporate environment, but we're also not exactly chill. We've got HR, performance reviews, office birthday celebrations, and a slightly too intense CEO who once said he wanted us to be a family, not a workforce, and then cried at our holiday party. Anyway, 2 months before this all started, I started seeing a new therapist who introduced me to a technique called internal family systems therapy. Basically, the idea is that we all have different parts of ourselves that show up in different situations: your angry part, your sad part, your protector part, etc. You identify them, talk to them, and try to get them working together instead of fighting each other. Weirdly helpful. I was into it. Now, I also have a habit of writing in a journal during my lunch break. It's my decompressing ritual. I usually just write whatever's on my mind, and because I was deep into this therapy process, I'd started addressing the different parts of myself directly. So, I'd write things like, "Dear Protector, I know you're scared of me failing at this pitch presentation, but I got this. Let me take the lead on this one."
Or,
"Hey, inner critic, chill. You don't need to drag me over a typo in the newsletter. Go take a nap." So far, so good. Therapeutic, even. Then one day, I forgot my journal in a conference room.
yeah,
I didn't even realize it until the next day, and by the time I went back for it, it was gone. I figured someone must have turned it in. Nope. Asked reception, I checked the lost and found nothing. I wrote it off and started a new one. Little did I know, my journal had found its way into the hands of someone very, very unprepared to interpret its contents. Flash forward a week. My boss, Claire, calls me into her office. Claire is nice, but she has this way of smiling like she's comforting someone who's about to die. She invites me to sit and closes the door. That's my first red flag. Then she hits me with, "Is everything okay at home?" I blink. Yeah? Everything's fine." She nods slowly. "It's just you've seemed a little distracted lately. And some people have expressed concern about some writings of yours." My blood turns to ice. Writings? She reaches into her desk drawer and pulls out my lost journal like it's a loaded weapon. "We found this after your team's client strategy meeting." I immediately start explaining.
oh,
That's okay, so this is actually part of my therapy. It's a journaling technique where I talk to different parts of myself. It's not like a thing. It's just. But she's still wearing that look. That hospice smile. "I understand," she says, "but we just want to make sure you're not involved with anything concerning, a group or an organization that might be encouraging this kind of self-fragmentation." And I realize, she thinks I'm in a cult. She thinks I'm in a cult. I try again. It's not a group thing. It's just therapy. Like normal therapy. With a licensed therapist. Not a commune in the woods or anything. She doesn't look convinced. I'm panicking now, so I do the worst possible thing. I offer to bring in my therapist's business card, which somehow only makes it worse because she starts gently asking if I feel pressured to defend them. I leave the meeting sweating and go home that night thinking, well, at least that's the end of it. It was not the end of it. Over the next few weeks, things started to get weird. 1. HR sent out a company-wide reminder about outside influence and internal integrity. It included phrases like, "Watch for uncharacteristic behavior" and "coercion disguised as self-help." 2. I stopped getting invited to brainstorming meetings, which I later found out was because someone thought I might channel my ideas from a different personality. 3. A coworker brought me a donut and whispered, "You can tell me if you need help." No judgment. 4. The final straw was when my department head asked if I'd be open to giving a presentation on mental wellness journeys at the monthly Lunch and Learn, and then subtly hinted that I could use it as a way to deprogram myself if I wanted. I had officially become the office cult guy. So I snapped. I put together a PowerPoint presentation titled, "No, I am not in a cult," a clarifying presentation. It included definitions of IFS therapy, quotes from psychological journals, a slide that just said "not a cult" in big red letters, and even a photo of me with my dog and a beer to prove I was still a relatively normal guy. I presented it during the next team meeting. There were laughs. Some awkward silence. One person clapped at the end. It kinda worked. People backed off, mostly. I got invited back to brainstorms. Someone changed my Slack nickname from Brain Prophet back to my real name. Claire even apologized and admitted she maybe overreacted. But the story didn't truly come full circle until a month ago when I was at a company offsite. I was chatting with one of the VPs and he said, "You're the journal guy, right? The cult dude?" And I sighed and started explaining again, but he just laughed and said, No, I know it's therapy. I do IFS too. But man, that was some legendary corporate telephone. I heard at one point you were trying to summon your business demon to get better sales numbers."
So, yeah.
I now answer to Business Demon in 3 group chats and 1 fantasy football league. TIFU by accidentally drugging myself at my boss's fancy dinner party. It was supposed to be the kind of night where I schmooze just enough to secure a promotion, sip wine like a civilized adult, and make a solid impression. Instead, I may have unintentionally convinced my boss and his entire family that I was either in the middle of a spiritual awakening or suffering a mental breakdown. Let me explain. My boss, Greg, is one of those overachieving CEOs who also wants to be everyone's best friend. Every year, he throws this black-tie, casual dinner party at his absurdly large home and invites most of the upper-level employees and a few randoms he finds interesting. I'm not upper-level. I'm a mid-tier project manager with enough anxiety to power a small country. But this year, I got the golden ticket. Here's where the screw-up begins. The day of the party, I was a ball of nerves. I hadn't eaten all day, mistake number 1. Trying to make sure I looked good and didn't bloat. I picked out my best suit, trimmed the scraggly beard, even flossed. I was going to show Greg I had my life together. I showed up early, mistake number 2, thinking it would be polite. Greg, being Greg, greeted me in socked feet and a robe, holding a wine glass that probably cost more than my rent. I offered to help set up, and that's when I met Greg's wife, a woman I can only describe as the spiritual version of Gwyneth Paltrow. Crystals, linen, intense eye contact, and names like healing water infusion stations instead of normal things like tables. She was surprisingly warm, though, and handed me a small, suspiciously perfect cookie as a pre-dinner grounding treat. Mistake number 3. I ate it.
Fast.
I was starving. "Let it settle into your spirit," she said. That should have been my first red flag. Cookies don't usually come with spiritual instructions. But hey, I was trying to be cool. I figured it was one of those gluten-free, vegan things that tasted like sawdust, but made you feel better about yourself. 15 minutes later, I felt weird. Not sick, not tired, just really, really aware that my hands were attached to my body. My internal monologue was suddenly running commentary like, "Fingers are wild, man. Like, they bend and grab things." I tried to sip wine. Mistake number 4. It made everything worse. Like my mouth was a stage, and the wine was performing Hamlet in 5 acts. I stood near the back of the room, pretending to admire a giant modern art sculpture that looked like 2 ferrets in a knife fight, and tried to breathe through it. Then came dinner. I sat next to Greg's teenage son, who looked at me like I was made of cheese. He asked me if I was vibing. I panicked and told him I was vibing at a molecular level. He fist-bumped me. I think I became his hero that night. Greg stood to give a toast. Everyone clinked glasses. I clinked mine a little too hard and spilled red wine across the white tablecloth. Not just anywhere, but directly in front of Greg's elderly mother, who looked like I had just sacrificed a goat on the table. My attempt to clean it up only made things worse. I knocked over the centerpiece, which was an aggressive floral arrangement involving what I'm pretty sure were real vines and feathers. I tried to apologize, but the words came out like I was reciting poetry to a pigeon. Something like, "The flowers weep but will rise again, as all things do, in time." Silence. Greg blinked. His wife smiled like I had just passed some kind of spiritual test. She touched my shoulder and whispered, "The cookie found you." That's when it hit me. I had eaten an edible. Not just any edible. A homemade, high-powered, zero-regulation, Earth Mother tier edible. I excused myself to the bathroom, mistake number 5. I took the scenic route, trying to avoid eye contact with every living thing. The house was massive, and I got lost. At some point, I ended up in a room filled with hanging plants and wind chimes. I sat down to recenter. That's when Greg's dog found me. The dog was a Pomeranian named Jazz. Jazz, and I had what I can only describe as a soul-bonding experience. I told Jazz all my secrets. He listened with the quiet intensity of a therapist who charges by the minute. Eventually, someone found me. It was Greg's wife. She said I looked cleansed. I told her Jazz had shown me the way. She nodded like this was normal. She led me back to the party just in time for dessert. I sat through dessert trying to look human. I may have applauded someone for using a fork correctly. I don't know. It's a blur. The only clear memory I have is someone asking me how I got into project management and me replying, "I was born into a spreadsheet." The party ended. I thanked Greg. I thanked his wife. I may have bowed. I told Jazz I'd never forget him. Then I Ubered home, crawled into bed fully clothed, and lay there wide awake for 6 hours, pondering the ethics of squirrel capitalism and whether time is a flat circle. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Greg. Asterisk, great to see you last night. My wife thinks you're spiritually advanced. We should talk about that promotion next week. Asterisk. So, I guess I didn't ruin my chances, but I'm also pretty sure I joined a cult. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.